Before Oreo became America's most famous cookie, it had one awkward problem. It was not the original. The cookie that became a supermarket icon, a lunchbox ritual, and a billion-dollar snack started its life in the shadow of another sandwich cookie that most people today barely remember. That forgotten rival was called Hydrox, and yes, the name sounds like something you would clean a bathtub with, not something you would twist open after dinner. But Hydrox came first. It was launched in 1908 by Sunshine Biscuits, and it had the same basic idea that later made Oreo famous. 2 dark chocolate wafers with a sweet cream filling in the middle. 4 years later, in 1912, the National Biscuit Company, better known as Nabisco, introduced its own version, Oreo. And this is where the story gets strange, because Oreo did not win by inventing the idea. Oreo won by making people forget who invented it first. In American food history, that happens more often than people like to admit. The most famous version is not always the original version. It is the version with better timing, better distribution, better branding, and a name that people actually want to say out loud. Hydrox may have been first, but Oreo sounded softer, sweeter, and more playful. Hydrox sounded like chemistry homework. That one difference may have changed the entire future of the cookie aisle. At first, Oreo was just one product in a crowded world of packaged snacks. The early 20th century was a golden age for American processed foods. Factories were learning how to make snacks consistent, shelf-stable, and easy to ship across the country. Grocery stores were changing. Advertising was getting louder. A cookie was no longer just something your grandmother baked at home. It could be printed, packaged, branded, stacked, shipped, and sold as part of a modern American lifestyle. Oreo fit perfectly into that new world. It was neat, dark, sweet, portable, and easy to understand. You did not need a recipe. You did not need a plate. You did not need a special occasion. You only needed a glass of milk and a small willingness to get crumbs on your fingers. But the genius of Oreo was never just the flavor. It was the ritual. Some people bite it whole, some twist it apart, some eat the cream first, some dunk it until it almost collapses. Some people pretend they are adults and then still dunk it anyway. That ritual turned Oreo from a cookie into a tiny personal ceremony. And once a food becomes a ritual, it becomes much harder to replace. That is one reason Oreo became so powerful. It did not just sit in the pantry. It became part of how Americans learned to snack. The cookie also benefited from one of the most important forces in American food culture: childhood nostalgia. Parents bought Oreos for kids. Kids grew up. Then those kids bought Oreos for their own homes, not just because the cookie was good, but because the package felt familiar. The flavor became memory. The blue wrapper became memory. The crumbs and milk became memory. And memory is one of the strongest ingredients a food company can ever sell. But Oreo's rise was not just emotional, it was also corporate. Nabisco had scale, distribution, advertising power, and the ability to place Oreo everywhere. That mattered. A snack can be delicious, but if people cannot find it, it cannot become a national habit. Oreo was findable. It was dependable. It was always there, waiting in the cookie aisle like it owned the shelf. Over time, that constant presence created the illusion that Oreo had always been the original. Meanwhile, Hydrox became the strange footnote. The earlier cookie was stuck with a name that sounded less like dessert and more like industrial cleaner. That is the cruel joke of branding. You can have the first idea and still lose the story. Oreo did not need to erase Hydrox by force. It simply became so famous that most people never knew Hydrox existed. Then Oreo did something even more American. It multiplied. The classic cookie stayed, but new flavors started appearing, and eventually Oreo became less like a cookie and more like a platform. Double stuff, golden Oreo, mint, peanut butter, birthday cake, red velvet, lemon, Java chip, seasonal flavors, limited editions, mystery flavors, and collaborations that sometimes felt like someone in a meeting room was daring the internet to react. This was not random. Limited flavors create urgency. They make people look twice in the store. They give food bloggers something to post. They make ordinary cookies feel like an event. Oreo understood that in modern America, a snack does not only compete with other snacks, it competes with attention. A new flavor gives people a reason to talk, complain, rank, review, and buy a package they did not plan to buy. That is how Oreo kept itself young. It used nostalgia as the foundation, then novelty as the engine. The cookie was old enough to feel classic, but flexible enough to keep becoming new. That combination is extremely powerful. Too much change can scare people away. Too little change can make a brand feel dusty. Oreo found a way to do both. The original cookie remained the anchor, while the strange new flavors created fresh noise around it. And the strangest part is that even when people criticize the weird flavors, they are still helping Oreo. If someone says, "Why does this flavor exist?" they have already done the marketing. The question spreads the product. The outrage sells the cookie. But Oreo's biggest achievement may be how normal it made processed food feel. A dark wafer with cream filling is not exactly homemade tradition, yet Oreo managed to present itself as wholesome, playful, and family-friendly. That is one of the great tricks of American packaged food. It takes factory precision and wraps it in childhood emotion. The cookie is made by machines, but the memory feels personal. That is why Oreo commercials often lean into sharing, dunking, family, and simple happiness. They are not selling flour and sugar. They are selling a feeling that says this has always belonged in your kitchen. And for many Americans, it really has. Oreo also became global, which changed its meaning again. In the United States, it is familiar and nostalgic. In other countries, it can feel like a symbol of American snacking. The same cookie can be childhood comfort in one place and imported pop culture in another. That is the strange power of a successful American food brand. It stops being just a product and becomes a small piece of cultural export. And yet, beneath all of that success, the funniest part of the Oreo story is still the beginning. The cookie that many people think of as the original was actually the copycat. Hydrox came first. Oreo came later. But Oreo had the better name, the stronger company, the sharper marketing, and the ability to make its version feel inevitable. That is why the story matters. It is not just about cookies. It is about how food history gets remembered. The winner becomes the classic. The loser becomes trivia. The first idea becomes a footnote. The better brand becomes tradition. So the next time you twist open an Oreo, dunk it in milk, or wonder why there are suddenly 5 new flavors on the shelf, remember that you are not just eating a cookie. You are eating one of the best branding victories in American snack history. A cookie that did not invent the category became the category. A copycat became the icon. And one of the most famous snacks in the world began with a simple lesson that still applies everywhere in American food. Being first matters, but being remembered matters more.